Good evening. Joe Visconti here, sitting in for Mark Schaftlein. And we got a great show for you tonight. Every day I sit in, I love it. I get a call and say, Joe, would you like to host the show today? I'm like, oh boy, I can't wait. Who am I going to have as a guest? And today we have Jeff Dunetz. I'm sure you've all met him before on Mark's show. But we're going to start it off with absolutely no itinerary or plans or ideas of what we're going to talk about. We decided to come on because we're so knowledgeable and experienced. Well, let's test ourselves to just see how good this show could be without a plan. So welcome, Jeffrey.
Welcome, Joe. You know the reason why you're here. Because
No.
I did 3 weeks in a row, and Mark was tired of my style, so he put me back as a guest. Actually, being a guest is more fun. Answering questions is more fun than asking them. So,
well, it is if I'm going to ask questions, but usually we did a show a couple days ago, I think, and on some other stations, and it's amazing what you get when you're live. The thoughts that come to you, if you can be relaxed and you know you believe in, and you paid attention to the media, you're involved in a lot of different things as we are at our older age. It's amazing what comes to you in the moment. And right now in the world, we're all watching, as all of you can see. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. You see this insanity with the judicial system. I mean, it's just nuts. We're all smart enough. Most of us have 4-year college degrees, and we can read legal paperwork coming from CNN or Fox or anywhere. And we're taking a look at some of the laws that are being used, the laws that are being overlooked, the duplicitousness of the FBI or the Justice Department. And really, maybe that's what the show should really be about. Where the heck are we going when they can just make up a law or use it for something it's not intended to, or break new ground with new laws, not just with Trump, but with just about everything you can think of, such as the governor of Texas, who was trying to stop the invasion on the Rio Grande. So he came out with all these like floating wall things, and the Justice Department shut him down. They're supposed to be doing this. It's part of when you're the president and you're an administration to stop it. So the people that it's their state also are stopping it. No, that when people are watching it, scratching their heads like, wait a second, this doesn't make sense. You're not doing your job, and when I do it, you stop me from doing it, and you call it.
And in New York, they're complaining.
Yeah, go ahead, good. Jeff, take off of that.
It's like they're complaining we're getting too many illegals, and I'm thinking, why should Texas and Arizona get them all?
Right?
Who should share in the fun? And if you look at high-priced hotels, they're moving illegals into them. Hotels that I couldn't afford to go into, they're moving illegals into. Well, I wonder if they're putting stuff in those small refrigerators in the room.
Yeah, I was interested. I watched Fox and Friends this morning. They put across the bottom of the screen the Roosevelt Hotel, and in New York, where they're sleeping on the sidewalk. We all watched the video, and I saw it didn't say illegal aliens; it said homeless migrants. Huh? What? That's Fox News. Homeless migrants? No, they're illegal aliens. They don't belong in our country. They're not supposed to be here. They're being shipped around. And then you look at the humanity of it, the bleeding heart liberals. And if you say something to those poor people, how dare you? You have a nice home. They're sleeping. No, they could have stayed in El Salvador. They could have stayed in Mexico. They could have stayed in Guatemala. They didn't want to. And I don't want to hear there's regime problems down there with political corruption, because where isn't there political corruption? Washington, D.C.? Come on. And they're not killing people that way. Yeah. We would stop sending money to those countries, which we're not. So what's it going to be? We're funding these Central American countries and their dictatorships killing their people? No. So you bring them here and you call them what? So it's a scam, it's a con, and they want people to feel guilty. The word we talked about earlier.
I like people without papers, because if I steal a car, I'm a driver without papers, right? Or if I kidnap a kid, I'm a father without papers. Doesn't that mean the same thing?
Well, the law is the law, and that's fine. But, I've talked about this before, a few different programs. I've lost track where, but the laws are being written today that are so ambivalent, and the language is so predetermined to mean 17 things that you could start. And this is what they're doing. They did it with Roe v. Wade, the right of privacy for women to kill the unborn. Sorry, folks, you're killing. That's called killing because it's alive and it's growing. You have to kill it and terminate it. Whether you support it or not, it's a termination. It's killing because it was a life.
I gotta
And
tell you
so
something.
they used the privacy, and so the Supreme Court tossed it out. That didn't work because they misapplied the law.
I believe in pro-choice, as long as the fetus gets a choice too.
Right.
So they have to wait till the baby is born and 18 years old. Then they could kill the child if they want.
Well,
and I gotta tell you something, if you ever had a teenage kid, that's what you want to do anyway.
I go back to this thing. I guess you and I were talking about Israel. You're Jewish, I'm Catholic. We talked about Israel before the show, chat while we we're setting up. And one thing had come to me while I've run for office, and not to be a holy ruler, because I'm not, but it gets down to, and I kind of discovered this running for Congress and Senate, U.S. Senate. I said, what's the argument you would tell the public as a candidate? Well, the argument for me was strip away morality and just say, is there a spiritual world? Is there something more than just this flesh? Is there something more? I know there is, but if the question to the public, is there something more? Did we come from somewhere? Did we go somewhere? Or is there nothing? Because the real reality is if there's nothing, then it's just a bunch of goo, do what you want. And that's kind of like science is doing, scientific materialism, materialistic science. It's telling people you're just a bunch of goo. There's no soul. There's no immortality. There's no before or after. And you can do what you want. And this is what's leading to the chaos of the world. We happen to believe there's more. And you don't need to define it, whether it's Jewish or Catholic or Muslim. It doesn't matter how you worship. The reality is we believe there's something higher and we come from something. And then half of the population in America unconsciously doesn't believe that. They believe, no, you have the rights to make any rule and law and change it at will. And if you don't like that, take Trump in New York and let's change the statute of limitations so we can nail him. Let's just keep changing rules to do what we want. Because there is no God, there is no spiritual world, and even cause and effect, karma, cause and effect doesn't work for these people. They do what they want and they get away with it.
Well, first of all, we both believe that God is a nice Jewish boy who went into his father's business. Really, the difference is what the father did. Okay. See, I remembered it now.
I know, you get it back.
But the other thing is, if you ever read the first chapter of Genesis, okay, first there was nothing, then all of a sudden there was light. Does that sound like the Big Bang? I mean, if you read it and think of science at the same time, the scientists must have read the Bible.
Yeah. Well, either way, the reality is we think in something that's more qualitative. But anyway, we've moved down this line. It's kind of funny going back to Israel and the law, which was way before British common law. I mean, you had law and Solomon and all that, trying to figure out what was just and right.
We have better teeth and better food. British.
Oh, this is going to be a comedy hour. I can see that. But the reality is, we look at the law. It's supposed to interpret every July, and maybe in your state, and in Connecticut, they come out with new laws. These all take effect, and you got to read ad nauseum all those legalese. So at the end of some of, you're like, okay, can I do that anymore or not? You're trying to figure it. And so the news media will usually dumb it down. You can no longer do that. But if you read the fine print, like at the bottom of directions on any product you buy, it goes down into 0.004 font. You can't even understand what the hell I'm talking about.
Well, when you ever take a flute shot and have a doctor explain before you take it, like 1 out of every 5 million die from it. And like, there's a 300 million here.
What dose is my shot?
Right. Exactly.
What dose is my shot? It's and the thing is, Jeff, you got to definitely laugh at some of this stuff. Today we'll have a day of laughing, and because if you don't laugh at authority or laugh at the devil, you get too serious and bound and tight and nervous, and people are getting all whatever. But the truth is, we need laws and we need law enforcement that are very simple and very clear, so everybody's on the same page, and we don't need two types. Yeah, you're above no one's above the law if they're Republican. Everyone's above the law if they're Democrat. And that's what we're looking at today. I hate to say it. If it was reversed and it was happening as a Democrat, I'm the kind of person, I beat up my own party, and I would definitely beat it up too. This is wrong. And because what's happening is the children, they're watching. The kids are watching. The next generations, 2 or 3 of them, are being groomed under this horrible environment, and it's going to stick with them. They're going to remember, like we remember the JFK assassination in '62. They're going to remember when this was done to the president, when that was done, and that was overturned. And as we get sane again, it's going to be kind of like mom was a drug addict, or dad was a drug addict and alcoholic, and we had a hell of a childhood. But now we have some money, and we look back at our youth as an individual. We'd be looking at America back 20 years going, wow, what a childhood I had collectively in this country.
One of the key things that I did with my children is whenever we were doing a Jewish holiday, I made sure to do it, and I made sure my kids would do it. Okay, because that's the only way to learn.
Yeah.
You learn through your parents. And as far as the JFK assassination, all I remember is that I cried because my cartoons weren't on. This is not a joke.
Oh, how old were you?
I was 6.
I think I was 6 or 7. I was in 2nd grade. I remember them calling the little box on the wall with the intercom came on, and it was the principal saying a president has been shot, and please bow your heads, and not a moment of silence, and say a prayer, because you could pray in school back then for the president. And that's the first I heard of it. You never forget the box on the wall in 2nd grade. But the thing is,
that box.
Remember?
Yeah.
A little speaker fabric on the middle of it, and
then that's how they made their announcements.
Yeah, and your eyes went right up there, and you listened attentively. And so they're seeing that and hearing that maybe through their iPhones or whatever, but they're going through this and they're being shaped by it. And so it's our duty. It really is our duty as I'm going to call us politicians, journalists, activists, whatever you want to call yourself, a person with a bullhorn. It's our duty to make sure there's voices out there saying this is wrong. This is wrong on every level, and this is not equal justice under the law. This is duplicitous. It's making up laws to suit your needs, and the voices have to be. They are out there, but more and more as they intensify the persecution, not just of Trump, but of everybody. We saw it with COVID. We saw it with many things happening, and the pushback can't be forgotten. The establishment in the world, especially the corporate world, wants to keep selling through Madison Avenue, would like us to forget that. They wanted to be Stepford Wives, a magazine where everything is pretty. And that's not the case.
9/11. After that, you weren't allowed to criticize people.
Nope. No.
And I worked about a mile away, but I was very high up my office. And I go into my boss's office, and I saw it live, and I saw the buildings collapse, and you can't forget that.
Yeah.
And my kids talked about it, and and I try to talk to them about it, but it just like the Kennedy assassination, something you can't forget.
Yeah, and COVID will be like that for everyone also, the way it came out. Never mind all the things that we're seeing right now, the Defense Department knew this and that, all the things they're hiding, concealed. They forget about the cause for a moment. The reality is we all lived under it. And we all lived under it. For the most part, Americans did a good job. I didn't, take the vaccine, but at the same time, I did the mask. I was, I'm walking in the building without a mask. I'm just going to, hey, listen, I know it's not doing anything because it's like a mosquito through a chain link fence. It's not going to stop it. Maybe some spit, like Dr. Fauci said, but I abided by that for everybody else, even though you have to kind of keep that. I don't like doing this. I just don't think it's worth it, but I'm going to do it because of that. And so we all kind of pretended. And so we lived in a time of a lot of pretense. And we're seeing that with the transgender community. We're being asked right now, and I don't mean it against people that are transgender and really doing all that, but the fact that we have to pretend that there's something that they're not, at least biologically. And in science, we have always believed in science. So science says biologically either this versus that. And so they want us to throw science out and start, pretending. We've done enough pretending in America in the last 10 years.
I can't stand the fact that they're doing it to kids without talking to the parents.
Yeah. Well, there's a host of issues with that. But again, it's down to that pretending. Denial I talked about yesterday on the show. We're kind of living in denial. We'll deny some of the reality to pretend so that we'll feel good. We'll put that on even though it's wrong. We'll do this even though it's right. We've done so much of that. Almost like
the interesting thing is, though, when you're in school, they can't give you an aspirin without talking to the parents. But they could put you through transgender, give them the medicine for them to switch genders without the parents. I'd rather them switch it around. Give my kid an aspirin.
Yeah, there's been more, and well, you see the parental rights eroding. You see the print, and here's the thing I say to everyone out there. Again, I don't care. There's a lot of great Democrats, friends of mine. They're not kind of crazy, way left, but and they have a hard time because they love the party and they love what it used to belong to. Who doesn't love the Democrat Party and JFK and Robert Kennedy? I saw Robert Kennedy speak in Manhattan last week. And who doesn't remember and love the idealism and the things that they're trying to say for the most part? But when
Kennedy was a conservative.
yeah, oh
He
yeah,
cut taxes by 40%.
yeah. So the point is, it was when they were fighting for the little guy, but there's no more little guy that's not being either put on welfare or given compensation. But for those costs, the rules and the attachments of what you have to do today is give up your soul. But they don't believe you have one, so they're really not asking you to give up your soul. But the government, more and more, what do they go? What's the next move that the Democrat? I will call it the Democrat Party. What's the next issue? I call it the next sick, twisted, something that was evil for thousands of years becomes their party platform. What's their next move? They're trying to lower the
Anti-Semitism.
What?
Anti-Semitism. Do you know how
Well,
many?
a lot of them, 77%, I think, of Jews are Democrats. It's going to have to be up to them to stop that.
Well, yeah, because the Republicans don't even go after them. And I try to get people to vote because I tell them if they don't vote Republican, the Republicans will stop supporting them. The Democrats already don't support them. And if the Republicans don't continue supporting them, guess what? No one will.
Yeah, well, I live in a Jewish community. I was here in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I went to school. We moved from Hartford when I was in a junior. Hartford was very mixed, everything, Italian, Spanish, Polish, you name it. And we moved to West Hartford.
My brother went to Hartford.
Yeah.
And we used to say Hartford, and people would think it would be Harvard.
So we moved to West Hartford. I went to school. Every kid was Jewish. I go, Mom, we moved to Tel Aviv. Everybody's Jewish. And we're the Italian kids. But the point was, I was surrounded by a lot of that when I was young, and I watched it. And that was in the early 70s. And the 73 war actually was going on. That thing was happening. So I saw that, and really because it was big in our high school because of what was going on. And that was 6 years after 67. And then I was in Israel in 2018, and I've watched what was happening there. But the anti-Semitism is something I didn't think I would see because so much of the Jewish population in America votes Democrat. You would think that it wouldn't be opposed to it, and I don't think it's all coming from what they're kind of called white supremacists.
They were doing Jewish supremacists during the whole white supremacist thing, and really the only Jewish supremacists are the whites, but because they tell the men what to do, so I think that's considered Jewish supremacist. But yeah, and if I actually went person by person by person, and I found that 27 of the 200 plus Democrats were anti-Semitic, had an anti-Semitic position.
Wow. In Congress?
What?
In Congress.
In Congress. I found one Republican.
Wow.
So, I mean, you gotta say, this is the party that I gotta be. How many people voted for Obama? Obama was the most anti-Semitic president we had since Roosevelt. He was the most anti-Israel president we ever had. And they were voting for Obama. And it's funny, I was talking about him to friends the first time he ran. And when he was running for re-election, they came up to me and said, "You were right." I mean, I don't think people talk about it that way.
It doesn't get translated that way, and you get a different definition. And all I can say is we all know it. It is the news media. It's safe to put those ideas that are lefty, and corporate America will buy the ads on CNN. Even if it's sinking, they'll buy the ads, but they won't buy them on Fox News. You can say what you want as a Democrat against anything, but I don't mean just Trump, anything. And Madison Avenue will buy the ad, but it won't buy it if W was in the office. It's not going to buy it if the Republicans are in power. And I'm not defending Fox News here. I'm just saying they won't spend the money in corporate America because they know beyond January 6th that Republicans just don't really totally boycott forever, and they're not going to riot. But they do know that if they stay on the side of the left and they want to burn America like they did in 2020, that their corporate headquarters will get burned, but that's okay. Somehow it's okay to have your business torched by the Democrat Party and the sponsors. It's really a mental illness. It really is. I mean, if you get down to it, it's the collective mental illness.
I mean, I was in advertising till like 10 years ago. And, you had to stay away from conflict. News media that had conflict. And
right.
Fox was one of them. And, MSNBC is great, because they fit in with the majority.
Well, I don't think it's a majority of the country. I think it's a majority of the programmers for radio, television, as well as the ad buyers. They fit in with them, and they can overlook the hypocrisy because they know there's a double standard. Isn't that being proved right now? There's a double standard of justice, so they're always going to be okay citing, except for that kid with the red hat that got sued those companies for coming after the fake Indian guy there with the drum. That was probably the only thing that really pushed them back on their heels.
They did a cut of the speech that Trump made on January 6th, and they cut out the part that said, "Go peacefully." So it sounded like he was telling people to go trash the Congress.
Yeah, no, I actually was there when he said that. And something I talked to a friend about this morning in coffee, which people don't get because if they weren't near, they don't want to speak about it. If they were, when he said that, everybody, this is really important. A lot of us were going to go home, not even walk there. But when he said, "I'm going to walk," not to blame him, but when he said, "I'm going to walk," there was an urgency of normal people, and 99% of them did not do violence, that wanted to go and see the president march. It was historic. So people were excited to go. So there was a lot of energy on Constitution Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue. Tens of thousands of people rushing, grandmas, babies, dogs. I was there. I filmed them. It was like, wow, the president's going to march. And we all thought, as the Tea Party did, and we did many Trump rallies in Washington, never had violence. So no one suspected that. But there was an urgency to go to see the president. Even though he couldn't go, we didn't know that. And so that's really why there were so many people going to the Capitol. Not as you think. A lot of us were there since 6, 7 in the morning. He finished at 1 o'clock, and we were exhausted, especially people who are old. They want to go home. Let's go to the car. You couldn't get to your car. You were going to get caught in a tidal wave of people pushing you one way. It's the way it was. And so it wasn't a riot thing. It was an urgency to make history. And none of what I just said has ever been really put in an article. And if you weren't there, you wouldn't know it. But that's what happened there. The violence in FBI, all this other stuff that occurred is another issue. But the whole point was people were urgently wanting to exercise the First Amendment, and they thought they had the right. As we can see today, more and more people are afraid to speak up. People are afraid to protest, at least on the right.
Yeah. But you know what? You know what's going to be historic? If Trump gets nominated and Biden gets nominated, okay? Because this could be the first time both candidates are wearing ankle bracelets.
They won't be able to go into the White House. You can't make it up. You can't make it. There's a graph yesterday I saw on Twitter. Every time that they did something to Biden, Hunter, or whatever, Trump is indicted the next day. Every time in the last 4 indictments, every time they're pressing him. Devon Archer came in Monday, bam, Tuesday they nail him. Every one of those events
did you read any of the transcript?
Yeah.
I mean, he was basically saying Biden was a big part of it. And the liberal media was saying, nah, it had nothing to do with him. it just shows the difference between media.
Yeah. We see now, not to beat dead horses, but it's clear for people who weren't paying attention, listening or viewing us, that when Trump made that phone call, he wasn't shaking anybody down. He wanted to know about the corruption and innocent our and our law and our treaties that you have to make sure you're not funding corruption. And so he asked Zelensky, and they turned on him because of the bio labs that were in Ukraine, because of the energy and the corruption. They came after him so hard, he didn't even understand what he was doing and what that meant. And we're seeing that today. The
And they
shakedown.
came after him after he left office. They
Yeah.
impeached him after he was no longer president,
Yeah.
which is like they did it because they didn't want him to run again.
Yeah. Well, he's shameless, and they picked the wrong guy to do that with. But I've got my crystal ball out here, and I don't care what they do federally. I know in my heart and in my mind that he will get elected and be able to pardon himself no matter what they try. The only problem I have that I'm thinking about, and maybe I'm being too, I'll take it to the limit before I'm not going to push it, but the Manhattan thing, which is completely bogus, but that doesn't matter. They'll try him in maybe 6 days, and they'll take 3 or 4 minutes to convict him. And they could sentence him there. They could have him come back. They could put him in Rikers or put him in an ankle bracelet at Trump Tower and say, stay here. It's a state conviction. Between that and getting an appeal or getting to the Supreme Court, which is a path for that, it's a state problem. See, these people don't realize. Can't pardon yourself from that.
What about the Georgia thing?
Well, he's got camp. There's deals that could be made for that at the end of the day.
I've heard, but you've heard the tape of the phone call, haven't you?
Yes.
There's nothing illegal about what he said.
No. None of the stuff is illegal. It doesn't matter about that. But what matters is that they can do what they want, and that's where we are. They can do what they want, and it's a problem because if they do what they want, they can. I mean, he hasn't been ever convicted of anything before. This would be the first one in Manhattan. But they could say, leniency. We're going to give you 6 months or 5 years. I think he's facing like 40 years. So they can give him 7 years suspended, stay at home with an ankle bracelet for 2 at Trump Tower because you got a place to live. Or they put him in Rikers. I think they just leave him at home. And they give him restrictions like Hunter has. You can't go on TV. You can't use the media. You're confined to your home. You can't do TV shows. And they can just put a whole, and they will. I mean, I can't see them not putting him either Rikers in solitary with Secret Service outside the door or in Trump Tower with an ankle bracelet, not being able to campaign. And it will definitely get overturned. But from that moment, next April or May, until the convention, that window of time that the Supreme Court can cure it, because they've got to go through the New York State Supreme Court, Federal Appeals Court. I mean, I don't know. I've been trying to study with lawyers how they get from a conviction in Trump Tower with an ankle bracelet to the U.S. Supreme Court to say that was all BS. And that is the problem Trump has right now. I think of all the problems, he can't escape what they want to do to him in Manhattan. I just don't think he gets out of it, and until the Supreme Court weighs in.
He got the best lawyers. That's all I could say. But when I heard they were trying to nail him for saying that he won, because that was one of the things. I actually posted yesterday. I did some investigation and looked at all the times that the Democrats in 2016 thought that Trump didn't win. I mean, Hillary had a list of 30. Okay. It's ridiculous. Everybody does that. Say, well, I should have won. Al Gore, when he stopped burning from global warming, said, I should have won.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it'll have to get to the Supreme Court. Every one of these things has to go there. But the one in Manhattan in April, and they're not going to give him an extension. They're not going to kick the can on it. They're going to try him fast and hard of a jury of Democrats, basically, and they can do it. There's nothing stopping them. It's like when Al Gore, talk about Al Gore, when he rented the Lincoln bedroom, got caught. He said, there was no governing authority or law that said I couldn't. They found a loophole. There's none that I couldn't. I did it. And that's how this is in Manhattan. They can do what the hell they want. Secret Service will say, okay. And I think that's what they would do. They put him with an ankle bracelet in Trump Tower and say, stay there. which you can't tour. You have to tour from his golden arches inside his gold-plated walls in Trump Tower.
Well, you can't say golden arches because Gerald Nadler, he got caught between the golden arches at McDonald's. They had to lure him out with a Twinkie.
Anyway, I think the whole thing right now is we're all seeing. I guess this would be a lab class at Harvard or Yale Law School. You don't have lab classes for law, but if it was chemistry, a lab class of them doing an experiment in law and blowing it all up in the last 5 years with the Justice Department and lawyers and Supreme Courts and judges at every level, the world is going, why can't we be lawless and burn the whole country down like the left did? Because not that we're going to, but because they did it. Nobody ever got away with it. And so the kids I'm talking about, they're going, why can't we just do that?
I think it's going to be such an uprising from the American people if they do that.
I don't think so. There was an article yesterday, I think, in The Hill saying that that Trump people aren't going to come out. Trump's been calling them to come out and protest, but then nobody wants to end up in jail like January 6th. And they will round everybody up that shows up to anything. And they'll have some plants in it. It won't be the FBI this time. It'll be Antifa or whatever, throwing a punch or this or that. And then all of a sudden people are arrested and they don't want to organize. So you can't vote because you're afraid your vote's not counting, and you can't organize to march. Well, what do you do?
It can't be Antifa. Gerald Nadler said they don't exist.
But think about it. If you can't,
Congress, you can't.
You don't think your vote matters, and if you don't or counts, and you can't get out there and protest, and all you can do on social media is get censored or false statements put up on everything you post. We're already being silenced at every level you can, if you think about it. And it went from the COVID lockdowns.
Called a racist. From what I've written, I've even been called an anti-Semite. From Media Matters called me an anti-Semite.
You know, it's funny. I took a picture of these Jewish guys with black hats out in front of the Robert Kennedy group meeting last week in Manhattan. They all lined up like ascetics, but they were all against Israel being a state. I forgot the name of them. My friend knew their name.
I think it's Satmar. Is the version of Hasidic Jews who don't believe that we can live in Israel.
Right. And so I said to them, you guys are Palestinians. I walked up to them. That's what I said. You're Palestinians.
I just say that, they're violating Jewish law, which says you're not supposed to embarrass other people. There's a concept called lashon hara, which means evil tongue. And that's what I said they were doing. To the rabbi.
It was kind of bizarre because people didn't understand. People scratching their head that are not Jewish, like, huh? Wait a minute, huh? So again, we're looking at the law not meaning anything. We're looking at different groups from Muslims, even Catholics. We got the Jesuits, who are like crazy. Then we got Dominicans over here, which are nice and Holy Mary. And so all these religions and our judicial system, which where law comes from, back in Leviticus, and it comes from the old law. It's all screwball. I guess that's the topic of the show today. Wait a minute. What's the word legal really mean anymore?
I worked for Madison Avenue advertising firms for 30 years, and most of them aren't like that. Okay. Most of them look like, who's the people that like this already? And I want to get those people because they're low-hanging fruit. But they don't come up with things for people who don't like that type of product because it costs them too much.
Too hard to convert.
Right. And besides, what was the show on TV about Madison Avenue?
Bewitched? Darren?
No.
What? You worked for Madison Avenue?
That said everyone was sleeping with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
That's not true either.
Mad Men?
I tried, but I didn't. But anyway, it's not as bad as their reputation. Okay.
Well, they're going to do whatever it takes for the corporations that decide what they want. They push them to do this and they'll deliver it. But what I'm getting at is It's part of the public relations of the arm that projects whatever message they want from the brand logo, brand loyalty, the whole bit. And right now, it's the consumer. You see with Bud Light, it's the consumer saying, no. So I think you're going to see boycotts. There's a power in boycotting now that hadn't been around for a long time. And that may be the way to change things today.
It's funny, when they first did the boycott, I said, I agree with the reasons, but boycotts never work. And that was stupid.
They usually don't for long term. They don't long term work.
Well, it not only hurt Bud Light sales, but all Anheuser-Busch beers aren't doing as well as they.
Corona, Bud, which I drink. I used to drink regular Bud and Corona. And there's another one, but I just said, you know what? I'm not drinking that. I went through the list when I was at the restaurant. Like, that's Anheuser-Busch. I got to stay loyal a little bit. The point was to kind of dent them so that they realize, hey, listen, this isn't mainstream. We're talking kids. It really is the kids with this issue. It really is. The kids aren't drinking beer, but it's like the parents and whatever saying, nah, enough of that. Leave. You want to do this in the bedroom, do it in the bedroom, but don't do it in the classroom. And that's really what they've done. They've taken things that should be in the bedroom, and they put them in the classroom. They put them on the street in Seattle. They're walking around. The men were driving bikes bottomless with kids around, no pants on. So they're putting it on the street and they're putting it in the classroom.
That has to hurt. Think about it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
You're on one of those bicycle chairs and you're bottomless. Okay.
Yeah.
That's gotta hurt your butt.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up pretty close to 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and I'm going to the beach today. So I wanted to enjoy doing this show with you. I'm glad we solved all world problems.
I got to stay in bed because I almost had a baby today.
Oh, you were telling me. I know. It's a miracle that happened when we discovered that men can have babies. You never know what's going on the earth.
And they could breastfeed even if they didn't have babies.
Yeah. It's a whole new world. So
people might want to do that, and God bless them. But when people explain it to me, I go, you want to cut what?
Yeah. I got to go. We'll talk to you later.
Hey,
God bless.
Great talking to you, Joe.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.